Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Tax in 10 with me, Rachel D'Souza, and Andrew Robbins. We are both partners in RSM's London office and have a wealth of experience in dealing with a wide range of private client matters. Your feedback is valuable to us, so do keep it coming, especially if you have thoughts on any topics you would like us to cover. You can contact us by email, and our email addresses are at the bottom of your screen.
Right, Rachel, this week I wanted to talk to you about these articles I've been reading in the Daily Telegraph about IHT.
Okay, hang on a second. I'm going to stop you there because I know you too well and you will not have been reading the Daily Telegraph.
Okay, well, don't go all fact-checky on me. But if I had been reading the Daily Telegraph, I would have been reading their articles campaigning for the abolition of IHT. I think actually this is a really interesting debate because it's a subject that people feel really passionately about. Either in favor or against. But it's also, I think that if a Conservative government did abolish IHT, it's almost inevitable that a Labour government would replace it with something else if elected.
Yes, okay. Before we go any further, let's start with a quick summary of the arguments.
So, IHT is fundamentally unfair because it taxes wealth that has already been taxed, and it directly impacts the ability of families to give away their own assets in the way they want to. Alternatively, inheriting wealth you've done nothing to earn is unfair and socially divisive. It makes it impossible to have a level playing field and disadvantages all of those children not lucky enough to have rich parents.
Yes, obviously, this isn't a debate that we are going to solve anytime soon, and we don't know how the politicians would approach it if the current rules were abolished. But I guess that doesn't mean we can't speculate. So let's think about what alternative models there are around the world.
Well, in that case, I would like to start with Belgium, which applies IHT at a rate of up to 80% on death.
Oh, well, I'd like to counter with New Zealand, which has no IHT at all. So I don't think that the debate is going to get us anywhere. So what about countries that do have some form of wealth or estate taxes, but which are not directly similar to our own IHT?
Okay, well, spoil sport, but there are some options here, such as Canada. So Canada doesn't have an estate tax exactly, but instead it treats you as if you sold all of your assets when you die, which creates a capital gain, which is effectively paid from your estate. We'd also look at somewhere like Ireland as another example, which is a bit like the UK and a bit different, because Ireland has a 33% estate tax on death, but it also has a 33% rate on gifts in excess of a lifetime limit of €335,000. The big appeal of that to somebody like me is that it means you pay the same amount of tax whether you make a gift during your life or on death. So the tax system doesn't end up distorting people's sort of succession planning decisions just because of the tax rate.
And of course, the US has a similar approach by having a lifetime tax-free allowance. But in their case, it is almost $13 million, and that's for the 2023 rates. So the reality is only the very rich actually pay estate taxes in the US.
Yeah. Now, I am conscious we could carry on picking countries and talking about different approaches all day. But the point here is that not every country in the world charges estate taxes at all. And when they do, the way they go about it is really varied, both in terms of the tax rate and the approach. So, with that in mind, let's speculate about what a Labour government might do if the current IHT rules were abolished. And I guess the first approach they could take is simply to let sleeping dogs lie and do nothing.
Oh, okay. But how likely is that?
I agree. I think it's really unlikely. If I was a Labour chancellor coming into power with no IHT, creating a new estate tax system would be one of the first things on my agenda. And I guess the easiest way to achieve that would simply be to reinstate the existing IHT rules. I would really hope, though, that that wouldn't be the approach, because having a clean sheet of paper would surely allow you to come up with a new system that's much less complicated than what we have today.
Yeah, and picking up on what you were talking about earlier, for a left of centre government, the Irish system sounds quite appealing. You know, you fix an amount of tax-free wealth that you think is fair to be inherited, and everything above that is subject to tax whenever it is passed on. Now, of course, lots of people won't like that, but if your objective is redistribution of wealth, it's actually a more logical system than our current rules, which allow gifts to be totally tax-free, but as long as you're lucky enough to survive 7 years after making them.
Yeah.
I think I'd also like to throw in the nightmare scenario of replacing IHT with an annual wealth tax. Now, I think this would be a really, really bad idea for all sorts of reasons, but you could see political pressure being brought to bear to introduce, this type of an approach.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, the big question in all of this is how realistic is it to think that IHT is going to be abolished at all? However enthusiastic the Daily Telegraph and Liz Truss are about the idea. Now, I may be wrong on this, but my guess is that it's absolutely not going to happen.
Yeah, and I have to say, on this particular point, I'm absolutely in agreement with you. If the Conservatives are re-elected, it might come on the agenda, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, and certainly not in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So I guess, the question therefore is, does that mean you have just wasted mine and everybody else's time by raising the whole subject?
No, obviously, because if we do get a Labour government, the arguments for reforming or replacing IHT will still exist. You might not be looking at abolition in that case, and let's face it, you wouldn't be. But there is certainly an argument for making fundamental changes to the system. And after all, let's remind ourselves the current IHT system was introduced in 1984 and
Yeah.
hasn't fundamentally changed in almost 40 years since its introduction. So if a new government of any type was going to replace IHT with something else, I would expect it to be done via a process of consultation rather than coming completely out of the blue. If that's the case, there would have to be a period of advance warning when you'd know that change is coming, even though you wouldn't know what the change is going to end up looking like. So for me, the likelihood of anything changing in, say, the next 3 years is minimal. But beyond that, who knows? So this reinforces the argument for taking action now if you want to do estate planning, rather than leaving it and hoping for the best.
Yeah, I expect that we are at the beginning of many, many commentators starting to speculate about the next general election. So watch this space for more thoughts from us over the coming months. And in the meantime, Andrew, have you got a recommendation for us this week?
I do. Since we've been on the subject of inheritances and ancient history and death and stuff, I would recommend Ancient Egypt by Train with Alice Roberts, which is currently on I think Saturday nights on Channel 4, but it's also available to stream on Channel 4. And it does exactly what it says on the tin. It is Professor Alice Roberts, who is a really sort of terrific screen presence. She's really enthusiastic. She's a great communicator, traveling through ancient Egypt by train. Covering lots. I mean, Egypt is fascinating. She's a great presenter. It's a fantastic mixture, and it's a really interesting but kind of soothing watch. So, Alice
Okay,
Roberts, Egypt by Train.
I might try that one. Thank you. And everyone, thank you for listening. Please let us have your comments and feedback. And as ever, we can be contacted on rachel.d'souza@rsmuk.com or andrew.robbins@rsmuk.com. Anyway, until next time, bye for now.
Bye.